Hey there, beautiful friends. Let's make English listening simple and enjoyable today. I am Jack.
And I am Emma. So glad you are here with us.
Emma, quick question before we start. If someone walked up to you right now, a stranger, and said, "Tell me about yourself," what would you say?
Oh, that is actually a hard question, even in my own language.
Right? And in English, it feels 10 times harder.
Because you want to say something interesting and you want to say it correctly and you want to sound natural, and all of that at the same time is a lot.
And your brain just freezes.
Total freeze. You know things about yourself. You have a name, a job, hobbies, a life. But when someone asks, suddenly you cannot remember any of it.
That is exactly our topic today. How to talk about yourself in English, which sounds simple, but is actually one of the hardest things for a lot of learners.
And we're going to talk about why it is hard and what actually helps. And Jack has a story about this that I am very curious about.
I have a slightly embarrassing story, yes.
Of course you do. Okay, let's start.
So first, why is it so hard? Because it should be easy, right? You know yourself better than anyone.
You would think, but I think there are a few reasons why it is hard. The first one, you have never really practiced it. In your own language, talking about yourself happens naturally, over time, in many conversations. You never had to prepare a little speech about who you are.
But in English, especially at the beginning, you might need to introduce yourself to someone who does not share your language, and suddenly it's a performance.
And nobody told you what to say or how to structure it.
So you end up saying, "I am Jack, I'm from," and then you pause, and you think, what do I say next? My job? My hobbies? My favorite food?
And you haven't decided the order, so you say things randomly, and it sounds a little confused.
And the other person is nodding, and you're panicking, and you end up saying something like, "I like very much the music, and also I have a sister who is older than me."
Which is not wrong, exactly, but it's not quite right either.
It's just a collection of facts with no shape, no connection.
Like you opened a bag and threw all your personal information on the table.
Here are my facts. Please find them interesting.
Okay, tell me your embarrassing story because I think it will help people feel better.
Okay, so a few years ago, I was at a work event, international people, different countries, and someone came up to me and said, "So, tell me about yourself."
Classic.
And I hadn't prepared anything, and I panicked, and I started talking, and I said, "I work in communications," which is true, but then I wanted to say something interesting about myself. So I said, "And I also do a little bit of writing on the side."
That sounds fine.
It sounds fine, but then she said, "Oh, what kind of writing?" And I had not thought about this question, so I said, "Well, mostly stories, personal stories." And she said, "Oh, like a blog?" And I said, "Yes, kind of like a blog." And she said, "What is it called?"
Oh no.
And I didn't have a blog. I had never had a blog. I had written maybe 3 things in a notebook that nobody had ever seen, but I had described myself as a writer with a blog to a complete stranger.
Jack.
And then she said, "I would love to read it. Can you send me the link?" And I said, "It's actually quite personal, so I don't share it widely." And she said, "Oh, I completely understand." And we moved on.
You invented a secret blog?
A very private, very personal blog that doesn't exist, and I had to maintain that story for the rest of the evening.
Why did you even say you were a writer?
Because I panicked. I wanted to sound interesting. I said the first thing that came into my head, and then I had to live with it.
That is such a good story and so relatable, because when you panic, you say strange things.
You say things that are not quite true because your brain is looking for something to say and it just grabs whatever is there.
And then you spend the rest of the evening trying to describe a blog that doesn't exist.
30 minutes of carefully not mentioning the blog again. Yes.
Okay, so what should you say when someone asks, "Tell me about yourself"? What's a good structure?
Right. So the simplest structure is name, where you're from, what you do, and one personal thing. Just those 4.
And that's enough?
That's more than enough. Most people don't want a long speech. They want a starting point, something to react to, something to ask a follow-up question about.
So you're not trying to describe your whole life in 2 minutes.
Just give them one thread to pull and let the conversation do the rest.
I like that. One thread and they pull it.
And the conversation grows from there, naturally.
So, for example, my name is Emma. I'm from a small town near the coast. I work with language, and I'm really into cooking lately.
Perfect. 4 things. Simple, clear. And that last one, I'm really into cooking lately, that's the thread. Someone who also loves cooking will immediately connect.
And someone who doesn't cook will ask, "Oh, what do you like to make?"
And the conversation begins. You don't need to describe yourself perfectly. You just need to start a conversation.
That's such a helpful way to think about it.
And the more you practice saying those 4 things, the more natural it sounds. Which brings us to the word of the day.
Wait, what word?
Describe, as in describe yourself. Do you want to explain it?
Oh, yes. So describe means to use words to show what something is like, to paint a picture with words. So if I say, "The coffee is hot, dark, and a little bitter," I'm describing the coffee. I'm not just naming it, I'm showing you what it is like.
And when you describe yourself, you're doing the same thing. Not just listing facts, but giving a small picture of who you are.
And the goal is to describe yourself in a way that feels real, not like a resume, not like a form you're filling out, like a person talking to another person.
Which takes practice, but it gets easier.
It always gets easier.
Listeners, quick pause here. If you are enjoying this episode, please share it with someone who is learning English, maybe someone who gets nervous when people ask about them, and subscribe if you have not done that yet.
Thank you. It really means a lot. Okay, I want to talk about something that I think trips people up a lot, and that is talking about your job.
Oh yes, the job question.
Because a lot of people have jobs that are hard to describe in simple English, or jobs that do not translate well into English directly.
Like in my language, I have a specific word for what I do, but in English, I have to describe it, and describing it takes several sentences.
Exactly. And sometimes people just say the job title in their own language and hope the other person knows what it means.
Which sometimes works and sometimes does not.
And sometimes you say your job title in English and the other person nods politely but actually has no idea what you are talking about.
So what do?
You describe it in simple terms, not the official title, what you actually do every day.
Like, instead of saying, "I'm a logistics coordinator," you say, "I work for a company that moves things from one place to another. I organize the details, which trucks go where, when things arrive."
And that is so much clearer, even if it is less official.
And the habit, which was our word from last episode, the habit of describing things simply is so useful, not just for your job, for everything.
Yes, build the habit of simple descriptions, clear, concrete, easy to follow.
And people will understand you much better than if you use official language they might not know.
Simple and clear always wins over complicated and confusing.
Always. Okay, and you have a story about this, right?
I do, and it's a little embarrassing about a time I described myself badly.
Tell me.
So I was preparing for an English interview, a real job interview in English, and I practiced my self-introduction many times. I had it memorized, word for word.
That sounds like a good idea.
It sounds good, but the problem was I had memorized one specific version, and I had not prepared for what comes after.
Ah.
So the interviewer asked, "Tell me about yourself." And I said my perfect memorized answer, very smooth, very confident. I felt great.
And then?
And then she said, "That's great. And what do you like to do outside of work?"
Which is a completely normal follow-up question.
Completely normal, but I had not prepared for it, and I had been so focused on the memorized part that my brain just stopped, like a car running out of gas.
You used all your energy on the first part.
All of it. And I sat there for a moment that felt very long, and then I said, "I like to read and cook and walk."
Walk?
Walk. I said I like to walk, which is true. I do like to walk, but it's not exactly the most interesting thing I could have said about myself.
The interviewer must have been thrilled.
She wrote something down. I don't know what. I prefer not to think about it.
And did you get the job?
I did not get that particular job, but I learned something important.
What was that?
Don't memorize. Practice. There's a big difference. Memorizing gives you one version that breaks when something unexpected happens. Practicing gives you the ability to talk about yourself in any situation.
Because practice builds flexibility. You know the ideas well enough to say them many different ways.
Yes, and that flexibility is what you need in a real conversation, because real conversations never go exactly the way you planned.
Never. Someone always asks the question you didn't prepare for.
Always. And that's why you need to be able to describe yourself, not just recite yourself.
Describe, not recite. That's a really good way to put it.
So, what does that look like in practice? What should people focus on?
So, what are the most useful things to be able to talk about? If someone is practicing, where do they start?
I think the basics first. Name, where you're from, what you do. Those three things need to come out smoothly and naturally, without thinking.
Because if those take all your energy, you have nothing left for the interesting parts.
Exactly. So practice those until they're automatic, like a habit. You hear, "Tell me about yourself," and the first three things come out naturally.
And then your hobbies and interests, because those are where conversations really start.
Right, because your job is often not that interesting to other people. But your hobbies, those are personal. Those show who you are as a person.
And people connect over shared interests, not shared job titles.
Exactly. I've never become friends with someone because we had the same job title, but I have made great friends because we both love hiking or cooking or a specific kind of music.
So spend time on your interests and learn to describe them simply, not just the name of the hobby, what you actually do, why you like it.
So not just I like hiking, but I go hiking most weekends, usually in the mountains near my city. I like it because it's quiet and I can think clearly up there.
That's so much more interesting, and it gives the other person so many more things to respond to.
And it's still simple English, simple words, short sentences, but it describes something real.
And that's the goal, not to impress people with complicated language, but to help them understand who you really are.
Simple and real is always better than complicated and hollow.
Always.
No exceptions.
And there's one more thing I want to mention. talking about where you're from.
Oh, yes, because that's often the first thing people ask. Where are you from?
And a lot of learners just say the country name and stop. I'm from Brazil or I'm from Japan, and that's fine, but you can say a little more.
Like, I'm from a small city in the south of Brazil, near the mountains.
And suddenly, you've said something interesting, something that starts a conversation.
And you don't need complicated English for that. Small, south, mountains, all simple words.
And the other person immediately has a picture in their head. They can ask, "Oh, what is it like there? Is it warm? Is it quiet?" And you're talking, naturally, about something real.
And that's what we want, not a perfect introduction, a real conversation.
A real conversation that starts from a few simple, honest words about yourself. And those words don't need to be perfect, they just need to be real.
So, today we talked about why describing yourself in English feels hard, because you've never really had to prepare it before.
We talked about a good, simple structure: name, where you're from, what you do, and one personal thing.
Jack invented a blog that doesn't exist and spent 30 minutes hiding from the woman he told her about it.
A very private blog.
And Emma memorized a perfect introduction that fell apart the moment someone asked what she likes to do outside of work.
Walk. I like to walk.
And the main lesson, practice describing yourself, not memorizing, describing.
So that when someone asks, you have real words ready, not a script, just you in English. So, listeners, here's one simple thing you can do today. Write down 5 sentences about yourself in English, just 5. Your name, where you're from, what you do, one hobby, and one thing you like about your life right now. Simple sentences, short.
And say them out loud, today, right now if possible.
And tomorrow, say them again, but try to change one sentence. Say it a little differently. And the next day, change another one.
Because you're not memorizing a script, you're getting comfortable with the ideas so you can describe yourself any way, anytime.
Flexible, natural, ready.
Simple, flexible, and real. That's everything.
And listeners, don't forget our word from today.
Describe. Learn to describe yourself, not just list yourself. Describe where you're from. Describe what you do. Describe what you love.
Because description is what makes a conversation, not facts, pictures.
Paint a little picture of yourself in simple English, and people will want to know more.
All right, one question before we go.
How do you usually answer when someone says, "Tell me about yourself"? Does it feel easy or hard for you?
Write it in the comments. We really want to know. And if this episode helped you, please like it, share it, and subscribe.
Take care, everybody. See you in the next episode.
Bye. Go practice describing yourself out loud right now.